Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. After what feels like endless studies, which probably is only like 5 or so, I am finally doing a gouache portrait today. This is actually a self-portrait, which is something that I don't really do. I've never really done a serious attempt at a self-portrait, but I think, that being said, anyone could be forgiven for thinking this is a portrait of Sid from Toy Story. So I didn't have any plans for this background going into it, and I think I went in with, I think it's a lilac from Holbein, and I should have looked at my swatch chart because it was a lot darker than I thought it would be. It dried darker than what I laid it down to be, and that is why I added that white, to just try and add a bit more lightness to the background. Anyway, this here is me just adding in a base layer just to get something on the paper. It's patchy, and that's what I expect it to be when I do gouache. I don't start off opaque most of the time, but looking back, I think it would have been good to knock down the whiteness of the paper and maybe put in a base layer first of just one colour of the entire piece. And I probably would have done that with acrylic, because gouache, unless it's acrylic gouache, is reactivated, and I wouldn't want to colour as a base layer that's going to reactivate. I would have just wanted something to kind of knock down that white a bit. Now, you may have noticed this is the dreaded first page of this journal. I skipped this page to start with because of the pressure that every artist almost seems to feel about the first page. And so yeah, there was pressure on this piece to make it look decent, because I can't rip these pages out, or I don't want to because it's a bound journal. And it's the very first page someone would open up to see if I ever did show someone in person my journal. Now, at this point during the painting, I started going in with a small brush and trying to define things and get everything looking real nice and good. And I got frustrated really quickly and realised that I'd gone too small too quick, and you'll see me soon now change to a bigger brush and really just start trying to lay in some highlights, some shadows, some colours where it's warmer around the forehead, where there's some pink, and then I go in and try and blend that in just to give myself a bit more of a base to work off. And for this painting, I did use my palette that I made a few videos ago. I mentioned that in my previous video that I used it as well. Except because I was using so much white, I just dropped my own white in from the tube, which just made things a bit easier for me, especially since I've almost panned one of the whites that I've got in there already anyway. So I guess the reason why I chose to do a self-portrait, besides the fact that it's not an uncommon thing to do a self-portrait as a study since you look at your face so much, but I recently did buzz off all my hair, and it was so lovely and empowering just to make that decision on my own without caring what anyone else thinks. And I wanted to capture who I am right now, and I guess it also works well with my progression with my practice with gouache. I felt it was time to do a portrait, so why not do one of myself? In the process of painting this piece, I found that I just kept on adding in a shade or a colour or some sort of dimension, and then I'd end up going over and blending that out, and I felt like I was in a bit of a cycle of just reworking what I'd already worked, and that maintained through to the end of the painting, to the point where I look at it now and realise if you look at where the painting is now, you can see this purple shadow in there, which I like. It still needs more work and to be refined, but by the end of the painting that wasn't there at all. So I did kind of, I guess, get a bit overwhelmed with the portrait, I think. The reference image itself didn't have much differentiation between the lighting on my neck and my face. There wasn't a huge shadow or anything, but I wanted to add that to make it a bit more easy to read the painting. But by the time I got round to deciding I was done with painting this, and that's not to say that I couldn't have put in more work, because I definitely could have, I think I'd lost sight of that, and so by the end of the painting the neck doesn't have that much shadow in it. Now, when choosing a photo to use as a reference, I didn't want to purposely take a photo to use as a reference of myself, so I just went with what I had on my camera roll, and to be fair, there weren't many photos to choose from, but I decided to choose this one of me pulling a bit of a silly face just because I wanted the first page of my sketchbook to be a bit more interesting than just a normal smiling portrait or something. So I don't go around pulling this face all the time, and nor is my camera roll full of silly face selfies, but I went with this one because I thought it was a bit more interesting than just your standard old smiling at the camera. I struggled to know when this painting was done because I didn't actually go into the painting, and I feel like I say this every time I go into a piece of art, but I didn't go in with an intention of what this was going to look like, what style it was going to be. I just wanted to paint a portrait and see how I approached it and how it turned out. I will be honest though, I did kind of envision a bit of a smooth surface and a smooth blend, and that's definitely not what I achieved. I found blending on this scale a bit harder than I seemed to when I was doing my small studies, and in general I was just a bit overwhelmed, and I'd go from trying to refine one area to bouncing around and, as you saw before, adding highlights to all these other areas because I decided there need to be more white yellow highlights from the lighting in the photo. But I think it's worth saying that now is the first time in this painting since I did the base layer that I am doing any work on the lips or the mouth, and although it seems to be the area that I avoided the most, I think it actually turned out as one of the strongest points of this painting. And I did struggle for a bit there because the lips, the tongue and the gums all seem to be so similar in colour, so I really had to work with creating shadows that I didn't really see in the image to try and make them stand out from one another. I just wanted to take a moment to say that if you are enjoying this video, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more from me, feel free to subscribe. I'm uploading videos every week at the moment and have a few videos in the works at the moment that I'm excited to share with you over the coming few weeks. To paint the teeth, because the teeth had very bright white highlights on and still trying to make the teeth themselves look white, I added a bit of a cool blue to a white to offset that so that the main highlights could still really stick out on the teeth. For the lashes, I use a super fine tiny little brush and just mixed up a dark black brown kind of colour. I used the same technique with the brows, but just ensured that I added a bit of a warmer brown, and then I also added a bit of a white kind of highlight to some of the brow hairs as well. My process for the hair was similar to the brows. I mixed up a dark colour and just went through and placed short little strokes all over the area that I had blocked out for the hair. I also went beyond that to try and add a little bit of more texture so it wasn't just a smooth edge around the edge of the hair. I did go in with a almost black towards the back of the hairline that you can see, and I should have done that first and then layered the dark brown over the top, and then I came in with a bit of a browny white grey colour just to add highlights into the hair. After the hair was done, it was mostly going in and adding all those finishing highlights. This is one of my favourite parts of a painting, so I went in and re-blended a little bit, then added the highlights and then blended some of those out to make them a little more subtle because I didn't think they needed to be bright white highlights. Now, does this look like me? My friends who I've shown it to have said, yeah, kind of. So I don't know what that says about it, but here is the final painting. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more, feel free to subscribe. I put out videos every week. My Instagram is linked down below, and I'll have the materials used listed down below as well. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you very soon.